Insightful analysis, bold comments, friendly debates. Find all that and more on Roundtable, where passion meets in-depth discussion and covers the hottest topics in China.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm your host, He Yang, joined by Tony Reed and Huang Shen. Good as always to have you, our dear listeners, with us. We have some fascinating topics for discussion today and every day. On today's program, fat camps. Don't you just hate that word? Okay, weight-losing camps designed for overweight and obese children are shooting up in China. We take a look at the weight issue of the Chinese kids and teenagers. I thought this was just an issue for grown-ups, but apparently also the younger group of people. Yeah, and these days people often spend more time around their coworkers than their families and friends. What are the taboos we should avoid talking about at work? And after identifying the landmines, what should we talk about then? Maybe there aren't that many areas that's safe for us to just have a general conversation. Or are we being overly sensitive about this? We'll get into that. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts at Roundtable China. When you have a question for us and want to pick our brains to get an exclusive answer, please send a voice question to EZFM Roundtable at foxmail.com and be part of our live show. But first, on today's Roundtable. Social observers say that the waistlines of the Chinese people have expanded with the economy in recent decades. And now, kids as young as 8 years old are taking part in weight loss camps to shed a few pounds. So, let's talk about this. What is this version, a kid's version or teenager version of Weight Watchers, I suppose, that's an American equivalent, and of these weight-losing camps.
So first, let's take a look at what is a weight-losing camp. Reporters from the West China Daily, City Daily, visited a youth weight loss camp in Chengdu City in Sichuan Province on November the 12th. So based on their field study, they found the camp includes a series of workout facilities. For example, like we can see in the gyms, like spinning bikes, running machines, yoga balls, micro dumbbell, and so on. But unlike general gym, the difference is there's a number of mini-size fitness equipment in this camp, which is only designed for teenagers. And here we also have some surprising facts of the camp. It's introduced by the camp founder, and he said that there was a 15-year-old boy. He came to the camp whose height was 1.75 meters and with the weight at 120 kilograms. Due to the imbalanced diet, of course. And in addition, the youngest member in this camp is only 8 years old.
Wow.
Yes, and also, I think people are curious about what about the price?
Yes, how much does it cost to send my kid there?
Yeah, so generally, for each session, it will take like 28 days. It's a cycle. The basic training fee stays at about 15,000 yuan, but that's only for basic trainings. So if you want to have some add-up classes, for example, one-to-one trainer, and the price difference from coach to coach. For example, the cheapest coaches charge about 800 yuan per hour, while the most expensive one may ask for about 4,500 yuan per hour.
Oh, 800 yuan per hour. That doesn't sound very cheap to me.
So that's more than $100
right.
for just 1 hour. And that is the basic stuff that a coach can provide. And also, sorry to intrude here, so 15,000 yuan for the
28 days.
28 days training. That would be
month.
$2,000 US. More than that.
Yeah, more than
2,000.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just to give you a picture.
That's
yes.
steep.
And here we can see what the camp will offer you. So those kids have to join the closed training program, and which means they have very strict timelines for meals, exercise, medium to short distance hiking, and a very decent sleep. And also the living conditions are similar to staying at a 3-star hotel. And each kid, they have an individualized diet and exercise plan designed by experts who have served China's national Olympic team.
Well, so you'll have the top people to get you trained and even sort out the food for you. That sounds like a tailor-made kind of program. If that's the case, then I can understand why it's so expensive.
Yeah.
But still, I'm still stunned by how massively expensive it is. This is a camp just for kids or teenagers, so anybody who's below the age of 18. Yet, what do you think about all of this? Made you a little surprised or raise your eyebrows at all, Tony?
Well, I'm from the U.S. and we have our share of obesity going on there. So I guess I could say I'm surprised, but not really that surprised, unfortunately, because we all love these, restaurants called McDonald's and Burger King and a lot of these fast food restaurants. So I feel that it's growing and a lot of people are starting to get bigger. And this camp, I think it's a really good idea. It's a familiar sound. Back in the States, there's a very famous camp called Camp Shane, which has been in existence since 1968. And it has an advisory, panel comprised of doctors and psychologists and dietitians, and they create programs for kids. But this camp is not only for kids; it's for young kids and teenagers, and I believe women as well. So it's a bit spread out. It was on TV like Dr. Phil in 2020 and MTV. So it's a familiar concept. They offer summer weight loss camps in a multitude of states. And also the sessions are for about 3 weeks to 6 weeks. Some of them are 9 weeks. And the tuition ranges from around $3,500 to $8,500 American dollars. So it's a very, very expensive program. But this is, they go about it a different way. Exercise is important to losing weight, but they aim to make it fun. So they have a lot of activities, rock climbing, lacrosse, and kayaking, just so exposing kids to different sports, but at the same time with the same idea of getting them to, lose weight.
So is that prevalent in the U.S.? Is it common to see parents send their kids to these kind of camps and as opposed to...
At that price? No.
Yeah, that sounds pretty
prevalent.
elitist.
Right.
Yeah.
At this price, this is, for people who are a little more high end. But yeah, and the rate of obesity in the States it's pretty high actually among people in lower economical statuses. So I wouldn't imagine they'd be able to afford this.
Oh, so it's like the people who need the service the most probably can't afford it.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Huangshan, do you see this as something that's new, recently emerged here in China? These camps I hate the word camp, by the way, because it has a really negative connotation for me, especially.
Really?
Yeah, because it's like you're trapped in this place,
I
or
guess...
you're sent to this closed environment, and for weight purposes.
Maybe to become a better you.
Oh, but again, is better the right word here?
I feel like you're equating this to a boot camp.
Yes.
And boot camp is, this is where you're stuck, you can't leave, and this is normally where when you're enlisted into the military. They call it boot camp. But camp can also be a very wonderful experience where you meet lots of new friends and you're in the environment, campfires, singing songs. So I guess it just depends culturally what it means to you.
Yeah, it does. And now we're seeing that there are camps set up for kids and teenagers with weight issues. I dare not use the FAT word here, but I did initially to make everybody wake up kind of thing. So, Huangshan, how would you look at this phenomenon happening in China?
I think this is definitely a new trend because for many years ago, maybe many decades ago, I think Chinese people, we were still struggled with starving issues. So people won't think about being overweight. But now recently, we really see more and more obese children in the society. I think the rising of this kind of camps must reflect a rising need or a rising demand. And here we have some detailed figures. I think now they become really common. And in 2015, there were 15.3 million obese children in China. And also some experts warn that if this trend haven't been solved properly, maybe in 10 years, and there will be about 1 in 4 Chinese age 7 children and older, they will be obese. And also, if this trend continues, and obese children and teenagers, they age between 5 and 18 in China, will reach 48.5 million by 2025. And this number will surpass the population of Spain.
Whoa.
That's a very staggering number. So I think maybe it's good to have this kind of camps because now we see so many obese children, but maybe their parents don't know how to help their children. And if they grow up and still gain lots of weight, it's not good for their health and also maybe not good for their social life. So I think maybe it's a good way if there's a personal trainer and give you a very scientific schedule to how to train your body to lose weight in a very healthy way.
I think it's really important here also to, distinct between what is obese and what is overweight. And according to the American Center of Disease Control, doctors usually define overweight as a condition in which a person's weight is about 10 to 20% higher than quote unquote normal, as defined by a standard height and weight chart, or as a body mass index, And obesity usually means a person that is 20% over the normal weight. And then you have another category, which I dread speaking about, but it's called morbid obesity, and unfortunately is an issue. This means a person is either 50 to 100% times over normal weight. So as an example, as a 6-foot man, you would be considered underweight if you're between 45 to 59 kilograms. And you would be considered normal weight for 64 to 82 kilograms. And someone that's overweight would be around the 90 to 100 kilogram weight. And I actually fall into this category because I'm currently 90 kilograms, but I work out and I'm relatively athletic, so it doesn't really it doesn't really give much information on if your muscularity. So if you have a lot of muscle and you tend to weigh more on this scale, you would be considered overweight. But this is how a lot of doctors go off of, they rate you on if you're overweight or not.
And that can completely miss the point. Just like what you said, Tony.
Yeah.
Because I remember earlier on social media, there was this comparison between the pictures of two women. One weighed 60 kilograms and is fit like a soldier.
Wow.
Like she could easily beat guys up, I think, if she was put in that situation. She can take down 3 if she wants at one go. And there's this picture of this other girl that weighed 60 kilograms as well, but she looked massively different. She looked, I suppose she was quite short as well. And, the comparison there. So, and of course, I saw that as maybe a promotion for some healthy eating company or some training gym or some place like that. So it's important to also check the other scores and make sure that you're not sort of missing the point here. And now with advanced gyms, when you join, like they give you a test and they test your body mass, muscle proportion, and a whole slew of different metrics, and come up with the so-called scientific figure of what kind of exercises you should take, and should you do more cardio or more of the weightlifting, that kind of thing. So it's really become a science as well as a business these days. But that's all about the adults, and that's a growing and maturing industry. And now when we look at kids and teenagers, I suspect it's a little bit of a different story. 'Cause I remember back in the day, When I was a teenager, I put on some weight. I could devour a cow easily every day, I felt. And I was shooting up. I'm a tall woman. And I remember gaining a lot of, now maybe you can call it baby fat, but that's such a cute way to say it when it's just a lot of
Extra weight.
Yes, that's put on just within a year, I think. And one day, my mom sat me down after I had my annual student checkup that was all like included in the Beijing educational and health system. And my mom was like, "Hey, sweet girl, you know how much I love you, and nobody should be ashamed," or she didn't use that word, should feel bad about what they look like, and none of that, okay? But you need to watch your weight now. And I remember that talk, and I remember feeling a little embarrassed, despite the fact that my mom already sugarcoated it for me. But I realized that, I'm a little fat, and that, now when I look back, I think that moment when you realize that you might be a little bit fat, and the taboo and stigma and all the negative feelings that come with it, you can talk health issues, blah, blah, blah. But that stereotype about your weight and how you look, it already eroded my confidence a little bit. So this is, okay, so that's one thing, okay? And also for kids, because these teenagers, they're hitting puberty, or they're going through puberty. So part of it might be you're eating unhealthy, but part of it could be that your body is going through is transitioning.
Right.
So shouldn't that be taken into account as well? And we shouldn't just blindly say that, this person looks big, so this person needs to go to fat camp, or, weight loss camp.
I think it's a couple things. I think that, like you mentioned, parents get worried, right? I mean, we know how society views people who are, fat, for lack of a better word. But when they get to this, when they start getting larger, parents get worried, and they start looking at alternatives to, help their kids to lose the weight. So I think this is probably a big reason why a lot of people are resorting to these camps. And you mentioned puberty, and I feel that, during this time, we do shed a lot of fat actually as we grow. But I really think it's important to look at the habits and how big this, the child is. If the child is what you would consider obese, where they've gone to, a certain extent, then you may want to consider some type of, program for them. But if they're just a little overweight, maybe 10% over their body weight, then, I think it's okay. It just depends on their habits. Again, if they're very athletic and they still have a little bit of weight, then they'll probably lose that. But if there's someone who's very sedentary, who likes to just read comics all day, then that might be a red flag. And also another thing to point out, I feel that it depends. For example, like I had a lot of siblings. I had a lot of sisters, and if I ever got off track and started to get a little stomach, they would point at me, they would laugh, I would be the fat boy in the family. So I really think that siblings really keep each other in line, because if you ever gain a little bit of weight, they're going to let you know it, because kids are wonderful and innocent, but they're also very brutally honest.
Well, sorry, Tony, but would somebody might possibly get traumatized by that?
Absolutely. And
that's bad, right?
Yeah.
Well, I also think that trauma can also lead to positive results. Sometimes,
but with a broken heart and a bruised soul.
Yes, but as you get older, you realize that it was child's play, but you use that as a way to get you in the gym, to keep you in shape, because some of those word associations that are in your mind, fat, chubby, they stick with you even as you're an adult, and it keeps you in line. So I think sibling rivalry is necessary. And in China, it seems that, there's a lot of single child,
only
child families, and researchers have found that boys without brothers had a higher body mass index and were about 23% more likely to be overweight or obese than other boys that had more siblings. And girls, interestingly, the risk for sisterless daughters to become obese was 43% higher than their counterparts who have sisters. Researchers found that the difference was not statistically significant, for urban individuals and rural individuals examined separately. So for girls, it seemed like it's not as high. I feel like girls have a bit more of a compass when it's like when they're starting to gain a little bit of weight, and perhaps their parents sit down and have that similar chat that you had.
My mom did.
But for boys, it doesn't seem to be happening. So I think the rate of obesity is getting a lot larger here for boys.
I don't want to sound so rude, but I have to say this problem didn't bother me when I was young because I felt so pleased that I had a really high metabolism. But I do remember I saw some chubby classmates and being teased or being made fun of by some really rude classmates. So I felt sad for them. I think maybe the parents realized this point. They just want to protect their children. That's why they want to say when they saw the trend, their kids are getting fatter, they're trying to stop it. And also, later on when I grow up, I know it doesn't matter about the actual figure of your kilograms, but it's more about your fat index in your body. So those children, they don't know about that. So they may choose a wrong way to lose weight. So maybe it's good for them to send them to the fat I don't want to mention that one. That's so rude. That weight loss camp. And also they will give them a very healthy way of how you can lose your weight. Because I know now many children, they feel guilty of doing nothing during the maybe summer holidays or winter holidays, just being a couch potato, staying in the sofa and watch cartoons, and they gain lots of weight during the holiday. And as a result, they say, I shouldn't do this. How can I lose weight? They just choose a very extreme diet. For example, stop eating anything or just only eat fruits and veggies instead of meat. But this causes more health problems to them. So maybe I think the existence is help them to lose weight in a more healthier and also more scientific way.
Well, then there's one thing also I think I wish we have this information that I think parents need to be cautious about. That is, check out what these excuse me.
I
weight
know, it's really
loss
hard.
Camps are doing. Because if your kid is being sent to a closed environment without your supervision for days, then I would want to know like every single detail, what's going on there, and to make sure that they are as good as they claim to be, scientific and safety and all kinds of matter-wise. But certainly what they're talking about is just eating health. Well, it's easier said than be done, I suppose. Eating healthy and with the right exercise as well.
And I think that, obviously with the amount of money that you're paying, I would be doing that too. I would be searching to find out what else are they giving. But also I think that children learn by modeling, and they watch their parents and they eat pretty much what their parents eat, and they pick up a lot of the habits that their parents have. So if parents are going to the evil empire, I call it, aka McDonald's, they're going to be eating a lot of things that are going to be going straight to their fat intake, and just it's going to make them a lot bigger. So I think that parents definitely, if the kids are having problems with obesity, they have to look at themselves and find out how they're contributing. And I know that may be difficult for a lot of parents, but it's a lot easier to go out and buy an Egg McMuffin, which contains, and this is a very common breakfast when you're on the go, I understand, but a sausage McMuffin, according to the Daily Meal magazine, with egg, contains a whopping 285 milligrams of cholesterol. And the McDonald's Big Breakfast with hot cakes and a large biscuit, which everyone loves, a very famous meal, which is probably the most unhealthiest food that you can eat. It contains an insane 575 milligrams of cholesterol. And this is a really big problem because sometimes these meals are not high in fat, but cholesterol is what goes into your heart and causes all kinds of issues. So it's a problem. This fast food, I'm from the fast food nation, so I preach just stay away from McDonald's.
Yeah, I think there's some merit to the traditional Chinese diet, but sometimes when we cook with so much oil, then that becomes not so healthy anymore. Right. One last question regarding this topic for you guys is, during this discussion, I feel we've already automatically shed some negative light on FAT.
Oh.
So, but is that correct? Shouldn't people have the liberty, freedom to look the way they want and not feel bad about it?
That's a beautiful question that you asked, and I feel that we should be proud of who we are if that's the way that we would like to look. But a lot of times it's a product of how we live, and we are not happy with it, but we find ways to deal with it, and that's a defense mechanism to combat it. So we just say, I should be free to look the way I want to look, but really they prefer to be thinner.
Yeah, well, one thing I don't like is stick thin. So, and people should have their choice allowed. You're listening to Roundtable. We'll be back after this break.
Informed opinion and heated debate. Find out what's got China talking and join us for your roundtable discussion.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, joined by Tony Reed and Huang Shan. Coming up, these days, people sometimes spend more time around their coworkers than their family and friends. Well, what are the taboos that we should avoid talking about at work? Because you're bound to have a lot of conversation with these people that are just around you.
Yeah.
And you have to work with, obviously.
Have to work with.
Yeah, says a lot. After identifying the landmines, though, what should we talk about then? So having a safe and cheerful conversation with your coworkers could be one of the things that people need a little bit of guidance about, and we will get to that. And we'll talk about the latest dating trend in the US called curving. So that is...
What is that?
Yeah.
Curving.
I'm learning something new from this show every day, and Tony, he's the expert in this. So.
Oh.
I don't condone that at all.
Okay, then he knows a lot about that. Is that okay, Tony?
Yes. I know a lot
Okay.
about
Okay. Yeah. Want everybody to be happy. Yeah. See what I did there? Yeah. If you are listening to our show on demand, you can find us at Roundtable China on Apple Podcast and 2 apps where you can check us out. That's the 轻松调频 app and China Plus app. And now on Roundtable. From a recent report in the Huffington Post discussing, certain topics with colleagues is an easy way to land yourself in hot water. Talking about certain touchy topics in most office environments could alienate your colleagues and even cost you a promotion sometimes. So let's talk about this. What are the landmines that we should try to avoid in office small talk?
Well, on the Huffington Post, we gathered some advice from career experts and human resource managers about what not to talk about at work. And topic taboo number 1, and I'm sure everyone has had this temptation, is to talk about how much you hated your last job.
Why is that bad?
Yeah, that's your past. Who care about your past?
Well, apparently, even if someone had a truly horrifying experience, it's and I think this is important because when you first meet someone, first impressions are very important. And when they start ranting and raving about how bad this was and how bad that was, it kind of creates this negative image when you meet someone. So it kind of gives you this feeling that perhaps there's some areas where they didn't take responsibility for their performance and they're, casting that blame on someone else. So you start to look at them a little differently, like, whoa, I should probably be careful around this person because if there's any mistakes, then this person's going to blame me for everything. So it's a negative first impression, I believe, when you start, talking about how bad things were, and as opposed to, talking about, what you learned, I just think that talking about the positive things just paints a better image.
Yeah, but nobody can always be happy, especially when you're like in the office at least 8 hours a day, right? And stuff happen, and we're all human beings. I mean, ideally, we all want to sort of portray that, we're a healthy, positive person kind of facade.
Right.
But we all know we've all got our skeletons in the cupboard back at home.
Skeletons.
Metaphor, okay? So So I understand where you're coming from, Tony, but I just find that could be a really hard standard to uphold.
I think it is. I think it's really difficult to try to extract what's positive from a negative experience. And I think that it helps us develop as people, because in life we all encounter roadblocks and and sometimes these roadblocks appear in the form of a person making your life very difficult at work. And it's better to convey to other people what you've learned and how this person made you better, as opposed to how they made your life miserable. Because again, you're painting this image of yourself. And again, this is going to an environment where people are, well, starting to get to know you. And I think it's this time is very sensitive, and you have to be careful.
And also, I found another one, which is maybe a taboo for many coworkers, is how the job hunt is going. For example, if you have an intention or you are preparing to change your job and you are applying for some position elsewhere besides your current company, maybe it's not good for you to share any clues or hints to your current coworkers.
Well,
because if there's a happy ending that you will get a new job and you can say goodbye to your old pals and say, oh, I'm changing to a new job. But if a sad ending is like you didn't get a job opportunity and you have to stay in your old company, but everyone knows you were planning to jump the position, so it's a little bit awkward.
Yeah, isn't it just a given that people should know you don't talk about you're looking for another job when you're still on this job? It's like you don't tell well, this shouldn't happen as you're looking for your future husband and telling your current husband, oh, I'm looking for someone else. But that could motivate him.
Well, I think that people, again, this is difficult, a lot more difficult than it seems. And I think that sometimes when you have this connection with your colleagues, again, like when you mentioned that you spend more time with these people than you do with sometimes your siblings or even your family. So you build this bond and you feel that, well, everything is safe. You can, talk to this person. You can confide in this person, and they won't, spread your business around, which typically isn't the case. But a lot of people have this feeling when they, open up to colleagues. So, yeah, they feel, well, I'm not doing so well here, or I don't want to be here, and they let that information out. And I believe it conveys a different, like you're not giving the job, like the job is not important enough for you to to stick around and to do your best. And so a lot of gossiping can derive from this too. So it's typically not a good idea.
Yeah, like to tell people you're jumping ship when you're not actually doing it right now at the moment, or you have not jumped already, then you might get fired or something.
Well, what happens if the other opportunity doesn't work out and it's been over a year and you're talking like you're going to leave and you haven't left yet?
Still stuck
so then you become like the laughing stock at work. It's like, oh, this guy keeps talking about he's leaving, but maybe he can't get a job anywhere else. And so
also your boss won't trust you anymore, and he or she won't give you any promotion opportunities or give you any important tasks. So you just being there doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that information unfortunately travels to leadership. So you may tell someone that you're leaving, and then that will get to your boss. And as you mentioned, they were like, well, I was considering him for the promotion, but since he's leaving anyway, then I'll give it to someone who's more committed to the company. So I think this is also something that can, the analogy of shooting yourself in the foot. This would be a prime example of that.
Exactly. And there's a few other things that could be touchy, but maybe you'll see it differently. So there's the medical issues.
What?
So let's say if someone's so having some sort of ailment, disease, and needs some treatment, or needs to be away from work for a little bit, or maybe some disease is progressing or retreating, and there's just, a lot of things that go around that, and definitely that's pretty private, not things you would tell anybody, and that's probably not something to talk about unless you are like super, super close with your coworker?
Oh, and just with the last thing you mentioned, and I think that even then you still have to be careful because you may feel that you're close to this person, but this person may be really close or closer to someone else that may still disclose this information to everyone. And I think that, well, for example, like mental health, I think that all of us, most people feel a bit uneasy about people who are going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and need medication, and the stigma that involves this type of diagnosis could affect your work environment. So if people find out that, for example, that you are bipolar and you take lithium, then you have the discomfort, you have the jokes, and if something is not functioning well in the work environment, they may blame you and say, oh well, Tony's bipolar, so we should ask him. And so the ridicule, and it brings out some of the negativity in people, unfortunately, but it's something that you have to be wary about, and so it's better to just not disclose your illnesses.
Okay, but there's this other possible scenario, Tony. Maybe sometimes the work environment is, I suppose, a little more friendly than case scenario A, as Tony just portrayed for us. And then this person's reputation sort of gets out of the bag, right? So he or she needs to see the psychiatrist and needs to receive treatment. And then this person just gets away with everything because nobody wants to mess with this situation, certainly don't want to make the mental health issue worse for the patient. And unfortunately, I feel in China, just through the short time I've had in my career, I realized that and it's not just this is like a general situation that a lot of people are suffering from some sort of mental health issue. Not saying that it could be as bad as depression. Well, that's the wrong word. It might not necessarily be a diagnosis of depression, bipolar, or any of that, but just unhealthy kind of mind state or difficulty in processing stress and all kinds of these issues. And I think it's almost like a cold. It's plaguing a lot of people. And when you know that, okay, this person might have this reputation, diagnosed or not with the doctor, then people just try to be almost more cooperative or sometimes like that. And then for capable people who work very, very hard, and then it's like an extra burden that you are taking because you just need to suck it up and work with whoever. And well, I mean, sometimes it could work the other way, and getting the information out, it doesn't look so good on a person because, okay, that this but it's almost like a get out of jail free card in a way.
Right. And I think that some people can use this as a crutch, unfortunately, where, I have a heart condition, so I can't actually do this task and this task and this task. Can you do it for me? And of course, some people will say, well, sure, I'll do what I can to help you. But, after 6 months or a year or, even longer, and, just delegating your task to other people because you have a heart condition, unfortunately, you're going to make some other people really upset. Like, hey, you know what? We're getting paid the same amount here, But
I'm taking half of your load.
It's too bad, that it has to go that way. But sometimes, people do, unfortunately, use this as a crutch. And, I mean, just to shift gears a little bit here, another issue that I think that is a bit taboo in the workforce is religion and political views. And I almost consider them to be the same, because a lot of times when we feel a certain way about something, whether it's our spirituality or, in politics, regardless of whatever, fact or information people provide to you, it's not going to change how you feel. And a lot of times it brings up the defensive wall, and you end up fighting with this colleague or looking at them a different way in a negative light in most cases, and it just causes some problems for you. And again, if this person can then spread more rumors or spread things about you in the environment, so that I believe politics and religion are a big no-no at work.
Especially, recently I've been reading about just U.S. politics with when people seem to hold so firmly on their political belief,
Right.
sometimes bipartisan or partisan, that kind of stuff. And it's a really touchy topic.
It is. It can shatter friendships, and just a quick example, like my dad, he was in the service in the military for about 20 some odd years, and he had a lot of colleagues and fellow soldiers that he would consider really good friends. But then when Obama got elected, some of his colleagues were really upset, and they said some things on the social media that offended him, and it just changed the entire relationship. I mean, a lot of these guys he couldn't call friends anymore, and then they ended up apologizing later. But it's too late once you've already said inappropriate things. Then it really does change relationships. And so I think that politics and religion are just really sensitive areas that people should stay away from.
Yeah, well, that's certainly something people should keep in mind if they work in an international or a company. Huangshan, what are some of the other landmines for you that you'd like to identify for us?
I think it's hard for me to understand the criticism of the company strategy because I think it's too hard to just find the boundaries between the criticism and maybe the constructive suggestion or comment. Sometimes if you're not alerted and you are not cautious enough, you may just, cross the line. So, but I think if you have some comments on your company strategy, it's a good thing. You're just trying to boost the performance and try to make the boss make better decisions. But if you just avoid all this kind of comments, some people may misunderstand it into criticism. I think it's really hard, and if you met some gossip queen, they may just spread your ideas around and around. So then maybe you started from the constructive comments, then it later developed into criticism.
You mentioned gossip queen, and those are typically the ones that get promoted. But I really think that, unfortunately, yes.
Wow.
Because, there's a different skill to promotion, and I think there's an art that's not being taught, and it's not just about doing your work. It's about how you to network and how to appeal to your leadership.
But that doesn't necessarily mean gossip, though.
Well, throwing someone under the bus it generates the trust from your leadership, and they'll go to you if they need to know anything, and there's this bond that develops. And typically, these people are the ones that get promoted, unfortunately. But I think criticism is natural in a work environment. We all have our criticisms of our jobs, but I think it just depends on the spirit and how we do it, whether it's deconstructive or constructive. And I think if you're, this company really sucks, if this is just very deconstructive, but if you could say that, perhaps we could, work better in this area and this area, it's just, I think it depends on how you word it and who you say it to, and just, the spirit of how you do it.
Well, what you're saying is also kind of implying that when you think you're having just small talk or a random conversation with people you work with, it's not so simple.
It's not. It really isn't. You have to be careful. You have to look at everyone. And it sounds bad, but sometimes you don't know what your colleagues are there for. Some of them are looking to promote, and sometimes to promote, unfortunately, they want to throw someone under the bus. And you have some people that are there to, just to work and to, establish decent friendships, but you just have you don't know who you're meeting. So you have to treat everyone as if they can potentially tell the leadership, and so you have to be very diplomatic and careful about how you word everything.
Then what are the things that we consider as safe, the safe ground that we can tread on?
Wow, that's a really good question.
Yeah, I have to say, after hearing the discussion, I just cherish our team members so much. We are so harmonious and so friendly. But I think maybe entertainment stuff is always a safe topic. Like, I talk about my idols every day and no one just say anything bad to me. So I think maybe your favorite books, your favorite movies, the music you're listening to, it's a really safe topic.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it depends on the content of what you're watching, because if it's
Oh, really?
yeah, well, if it's something that's other people may not, find very appealing, it may offend them, and you have to be careful about that
Wow,
too.
that's really scary.
No, but I think like where you've gone and what you did over the weekend, again, depending on the content, it should be okay. But yeah, it's tough. It feels like you're walking on on eggshells, and you have to be very careful about how you speak at work.
Okay, Tony, how can someone live like that? Because at home, there's also landmines, and you don't, like, I think this is I'd say the stupidest thing ever is when you take the emotional garbage and home and dump it on your significant other or your family members. It's not like, I don't think that's justified at all. Because they're actually the people that matter the most in your life, and don't leave the worst for them. But if that is the theory that we temporarily adhere to, then at work, I'm also walking on eggshells. Then, like, should you even expect to develop a meaningful relationship, maybe with some people at work, or maybe that's just asking too much?
I think it's tough. I think that in the beginning stages, it's better you have to be careful for a while, at least until, and I think when you work with people, when there's struggle and when there's conflict, you can see the true colors of your colleagues. And at that time, it's good to know what you're dealing with. And sometimes it's better to meet people outside of work. And sometimes you can see a different person. And so I think if you're going to discuss certain things about the company and things about your past work, it's probably better to do it in a context that's outside of the environment.
Yes, and also just try to be maybe a little bit more just looking at this objectively, maybe, and don't overshare with just anybody. Yeah, and that's always something
Definitely.
you can keep in mind, possibly. You're listening to Roundtable. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a new dating trend called curving. Stay with us to find out more on that.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable, where East meets West and understanding is the goal.
It's the hour of Roundtable with myself, He Yang, Tony Reed, and Huang Shen. Lest you get too comfortable with ghosting. That's one word we'll explain in a second if you missed out on that one. There's a new, equally frustrating dating trend to worry about, and it's called curving. So CURVIN. Curvers' disinterest speaks volumes, but the person who is texting them can't seem to read between the lines. So it's important to equip ourselves with this knowledge, I guess. Otherwise, how do you date in this scary digital world? Tony, you seem to know more about this amongst us all. Well, definition, please.
I'm smiling here because it's interesting that they call it a new dating trend, because this has been going on for a while. I'm laughing because they actually gave it a term. To curve someone is to respond to texts, but in a way that suggests you'd rather really just end the conversation. The style of communication here is curvers never initiate conversation, and their return texts are normally sporadic and lacking of emotion. So to curve really means to reject, and there's an art to it. Quality curvers know how to come off polite, walking that fine line between being submissive and simply casual. So, as an example, if you send them a question, they will probably respond days later and say, "Oh, sorry, I just saw this," or "Oh, yeah, I've been okay." This is an example of you being curved, pretty much, and they'll send you a thumbs up. So just no emotion and just very late on responses. And this is a little bit different than ghosting. Ghosting is where you just vanish off the face of the earth after making contact. So after someone adds you on their WeChat, and when they see you, they're very polite and nice, but then you never hear from them again. Even after you've messaged them, they just won't respond. So ghosting and curving is a little bit different. But curving kind of implies that there's going to be some type of connection, but in reality, it's not going to happen.
So it's pretty much just a no then. So it's almost like you think you have a glimmer of hope on the horizon, and actually it's just no. Is it?
I feel bad because I've done this, actually. I've done this quite a bit. And I didn't realize that it would cause so much conflict in people. I actually feel that some people would be able to read between the lines and just say, oh, this person's either busy or not interested.
Yeah.
So I would respond. I've done this many times, but it's interesting now that there's a term for it. And people are actually, it's actually really, it causes people a lot of stress, apparently.
I do want to defend the curvers, but I've been there before. Like, I don't want to be so rude to end a conversation. I'm also a person who don't initially enter the conversation. So even I was involved in a very boring conversation, I would just not to end it by myself. I would give you a hint, and I just send you maybe a meme, a sticker, and to say I'm not interested in a topic, and just stop it. And also, I think for Chinese girls, we all been in a place that your parents force you to have some blind date. They arrange some for you. And there is a potential maybe person you need to talk to, but you don't want to do that. So what you can do, and if you just don't say anything that make you look so rude, but you show a very positive and polite gesture, but let them to enter conversation.
And also, never say never. You don't know. Maybe in the future something happened. Maybe this struck by a lightning or something. Or maybe Starbucks suddenly started serving pumpkin spice latte in China. And then suddenly this guy doesn't seem to be the boring person that you thought him to be. And maybe you think of him as, oh, he's actually a home plant and he's got potential, maybe.
Oh.
So, the reason why I say this is maybe I should curve more. Because
Instead of get curved.
Because I'm the kind of person that I'm
Ghosty?
No, I'm simple, straightforward. And if I like you, I can't wait to see you every day and I'll let you know. But if I don't like you in this dating situation, then I would say, hey, you're a great guy. And let's just be friends. And that's what I do. So that's pretty much, is that like a soft no? Or is it a hard no?
Is it also a kind of curving? Because you say, let's be friends. Then you would talk again.
I agree. I think it depends.
But not boyfriend or girlfriend.
It's another kind of curving.
I agree.
Okay.
You're just more verbal with your curving. But it's, according to the couples therapist on Huffington Post, ghosters and curvers suffer from the same problem, and they're just really bad at saying goodbye. It's difficult to tell someone, I'm not interested in you. I wish you the best. It's really tough. It's difficult to
just
do.
Just be friends.
But that doesn't
people
quite
know that,
no,
right?
Some guy, for example, like myself, I would get that.
Yeah.
But there are some guys out there that's a hope. That's like, you know what?
Let's be
She's
friends.
not into me now, but
Let's start with being friends.
What
and
about
maybe
this?
in the
And
future,
eventually-
our
Let's be
relationship will change.
acquaintances. You've been demoted from friend to acquaintances. But who knows? We might still bump into each other in town and see, there is a bottom line.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be awkward with this person next time.
So it's just better to just keep them be cordial, and you respond once in a while, and you hope eventually they get the hint. But for some people, it doesn't really work out.
Yeah, and that's it for today's roundtable. Bye-bye.